What's up, Philadelphia? Welcome to 30th Street Station, a reimagined 30th Street Station, that is. I am Yolanda Wisher. I am the Philadelphia Poet Laureate. Did you know we had a Poet Laureate? Poet Laureate is an ambassador for poetry in the city of Philadelphia. I visit schools, community centers, celebrate the gospel that is poetry, and try to bring it to as many people as possible. So that's why we're doing a 2-week celebration of poetry here in 30th Street Station every weekday at 4:52 p.m. A different poet from Philly or the East Coast. And on Saturday, we're doing a great concert of poets paired with musicians for a really exciting afternoon. After you pay your taxes, you need some spiritual relief, you can come here and get some sisterly affection and go home feeling groovy. So, we're gonna get started. We've had the twin poets on Monday, we had Greg Corbin on Tuesday, and today you are going to be treated to the poetry of Michelle Myers. If you're interested in reading along, her bio is on the table. Please take one of our brochures and you can find out more about Michelle. We also have a sample, an excerpt from one of her poems. That's our free poetry swag. Please take it home with you and enjoy it. Michelle Myers is an award-winning spoken word poet, community activist, and educator. As a founding member of Yellow Rage, an Asian American female spoken word poetry group, Michelle has appeared on HBO's Russell Simmons Presents Deaf Poetry, in the first live Deaf Poetry Jam show presented at the HBO US Comedy Arts Festival, and in the Deaf Poetry Jam College Tour. She is also a 2-time Emmy-nominated TV show host for Community College of Philadelphia's spoken word poetry competition show, Drop the Mic. Give it up for Emmy-nominated. Right here in 30th Street. As a solo performance artist, Michelle has been the recipient of numerous grants and awards. She has featured at hundreds of college campuses as well as many distinguished venues across the country, including the Painted Bride Art Center, the Bowery Poetry Club, the Asian American Writers Workshop, the Asian Arts Initiative, and the Japanese American National Museum. A professional spoken word poet for 16 years, Michelle draws from her personal experiences as a biracial Korean American woman to write poetry that challenges mainstream misconceptions of Asianness and explores the intersections of race, culture, gender, community, and self. Please give a warm welcome at 30th Street for the Outbound Poetry Festival to Michelle Myers.
Lifetimes infinite, billion strong. I learned this song from the ancestral throng who within me dance a double helix. Feel this, the whip genetic hurricanes in my veins gain perpetuity like a pair of cranes. Creating symbol of longevity. Their bodies and spirits don't weigh heavy on me. I am who I am because of men like Yun Chun Hee. Grandfather, one in a billion ancestor who lived to prepare my destiny or my harmony. Shinde Sun, I don't need a reason. It's always to celebrate your ancestor season. Season me Korean, nothing else I'd rather be in this lifetime. It's my time to shine and pave the way for generations next to join me in pride expressed for this mind, this body, this spirit fed X from blood to blood. A billion-gallon flow and fam to fam. That's fan eternal through my Korean maternal line. I need to find my space, to find my face in this ancestral embrace that is skin tight, but my skin fits me just right. And like a person who's lost their sight, I search the contours of my face for a trace of this or that ancestor who's melted into my skin forever. They're all there, my ancestral throne, for I am, we are, lifetimes infinite and billion strong. Thank you. So what's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Are you doing good? I'm so happy to see you all here today. Thank you so much. So I did something really different, which was to start with this poem, which is called Ancestor Worship. And it's a poem that I wrote to, oh, maybe I shouldn't touch the mic. It's a poem that I wrote to honor my Korean ancestors. And when I honor my Korean ancestors, I also honor your ancestors. One of the things that I like to say to folks is that, you know, I don't know if we really ever think about how blessed we are and how much of a miracle it is that we, as an individual, who we are, is here walking the earth today. There had to be ancestors of yours who lived 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, right? In order for you, as the unique individual you are, to be here today. So sometimes I think I have to remind myself of this, and I just encourage you all too, to just think about and appreciate how every single day you walk beside your ancestors, okay? So thank you so much. So the next poem that I'm going to share with you is actually a new poem. It's the poem that was published in Title magazine today. And it's called When the Shattered Awake, Morning Songs, July 2016. I wrote it for all the people we lost to police brutality and for their families. And it was inspired by the incidents that occurred with Yolanda Castile and Alton Sterling. I was actually traveling when all that was happening, and I was completely disconnected from the news and social media, and I didn't know what was going on. And then I performed a poem, which I'm going to perform after this one, to a group of Native American youth that I was conducting poetry workshops for. And the director said, oh, that poem is so timely given everything that's been happening the last couple days. And I was like, oh my God, what's been happening the last couple days? And when I went back to my hotel that evening, that's when the protesters in Dallas had been fired upon, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, what's been going on? And then I just started like backtracking, and I felt I was so saddened, so filled with sorrow. I was angry, but at the same time I was paralyzed. I didn't know really what I could do. And then what kind of prompted me to write this poem was the press conference that Alton Sterling's family held, where his son broke down at the press conference. Do you guys remember that? And it made me want to write this poem because when I write about issues of violence, anti-Asian violence, violence as a result of guns, right? I have poems about gun violence and so forth and so on. One of the things that I really try to encourage people to think about is that, you know, when all the protests are over, when the news stops reporting on it, it's the families who have to pick up the pieces, right? So, for all the people we have lost to police brutality and for their families. 1. We meet again at the stony edge of blood-red waters. Every time you speak, ghosts fly from your ragged breath. 2. A father gone. A child's heartbroken sobs. Your clenched hands give you away. 3. I thought we walked together, but my naked feet leave no imprint on the earth. My heart trips on the wasted echo of asking, why? 4. Even while pain prowls around our hearts, let us dare to treat each other's bodies like sacred prayer. 5. Not knowing what to do, I give you my hands. Please forgive me if they are useless, but this morning they held each of my children's faces as I kissed their cheeks. So it is a matter of love. Thank you. So just really quick context for this next poem. It's a poem called It's Nothing, and I wrote it for a woman whose name is Mrs. Lee. And her son, Fong, was 19 years old. Their ethnic identity is Hmong, right? So they came from Southeast Asia as refugees as a result of the Vietnam War. And in 2006, he was shot and killed 8 times in the back by a Minneapolis police officer whose name is Jason Anderson. And there are a lot of issues going on with the killing of Fong Lee. First of all, there was a gun found at the scene, but the gun didn't have Fong Lee's fingerprints on it. he didn't have gunpowder residue on his clothes or anything like that. A video expert had testified from the video surveillance that was taken of the shooting that there was no gun in Fong Lee's hand. And it was also testified during the trial that the gun was actually the property of the Minneapolis Police Department at the time it was found at the scene. And Jason Anderson was acquitted of any wrongdoing in Fong Lee's death. In fact, he was awarded the Medal of Valor specifically for shooting and killing Fong Lee. And so protests erupted in Minneapolis in the spring of 2009 when the verdict came down. And I went out to Minneapolis in the fall of 2009 for a fundraiser for the family. And that's when I met Fong Lee's mother and his sister Shua, who was often the spokesperson for the family. And so this poem was inspired by an actual conversation that I had with Mrs. Lee. It's nothing. Thank you, you say. When I tell you it's nothing, you say, it's not nothing. It means a lot, and I know I've said the wrong words. Even trying to correct myself, I don't get it right. It's my pleasure, I say. But it's not a pleasure either, because this is all unspeakable, earth-shattering anguish. It's not a pleasure to a mother who's lost a son, to a sister who's lost a brother, and I'm just a poet, trying to make the world a better place, armed with flimsy words that can't stop bullets, avenge murder, or save your son. And so I say what I am doing is nothing. If only I could do more, but all I can do is this. Stand on stage, spitting impotent words and vehemence of injustice, entreating strangers to be aware, to donate money, to spread the word, trying to pound my own weak words into something like cold steel, to hold to the figured throats of Jason Anderson and all those other racist pigs on the Minneapolis police force and on that jury and scream, die! Die, you murderers! Hateful, vengeful words that I'm hesitant to even share with you in this poem because I'm afraid that you will think badly of me. This person who you thought was such a nice girl. But I sit at this table and I witness this wall of words erected before my very eyes and cemented by the silence in between talking as your tired face speaks Hmong to your daughter, who attempts to translate your words into a language beyond English, into a language the heart understands. And so that my heart will understand, you bring me Fong's picture printed on computer paper and say through Shua, I wanted you to have the original, but I couldn't find it. But it's okay because this speaks loudly enough. And so tonight, I testify to an audience at the Outbound Poetry Festival at 30th Street Station in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on your behalf. But this is nothing. What I wish is that I could bring you back your son and brother. I wish I could bring him back to you, that child watching birds and chasing pigeons. I wish I could bring him back bulletproof and shielded by force fields so that he can walk as always through your front door to sit in family photos and play with nieces and nephews. I wish I could bring you peace so that you could sleep with a quiet mind and so that you're not fearful some cop is raiding around every corner for one of your other children to slip up. Just once, I wish I could help you to feel safe, to be happy, and to simply live again. I wish I could do more than cry on stage for you, fight for you, be angry for you with these never lasting words. But this is the best that I can do, and this is nothing, because it is what I must do to demand something more for you, for us, for Fong. Thank you. So, I know I do a lot of heavy pieces, and, they're very sad. I gotta stop touching the mic. They're very sad, and they can be very angry. So, I do, want to share some poems that kind of express hopefulness, right? Maybe solutions. And so, the next poem that I'm going to share with you is called Detroit Summer. And it's a poem that I wrote after I was at one of these really heavy events that was about anti-Asian violence and so forth and so on. And myself and many of the other artists that were at that event, we went to this block party. okay, called Detroit Summer, which Detroit Summer actually happens every year in Detroit, and it's organized by Grace Lee Boggs. I don't know if you guys know who Grace Lee Boggs is, but it's an amazing Asian American activist from Detroit. And so there was this block party going on, and it was like, you know, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-generational, and you know, this neighborhood was celebrating that they had taken this empty lot that had been like filled with trash and all kinds of stuff. They had cleaned it up and they turned it into a community garden, and they were just starting like to harvest some of the food that they had planted, and they were having a big barbecue, and they had like, you know, everything blocked off this big stage, and people were singing and sharing poetry, and kids were playing everywhere, and I was like, this is what we're working towards, right? Like, just recognizing each other as human beings, right? And respecting the right for every human being to be treated with dignity, right? So, Detroit Summer. Hot times in the city, but we're running red lights in search of Detroit Summer. And because this whole world is ours, we finally find it. Why was I worried? All we had to do is listen. Listen for the ma'un beating in our tears, our sweat, our smiles, now at this block party pulsating with people just like us. People who want to nurture gardens of children so they can breathe love and life and hope. I see one of the little sunflowers now, yes, a little breath of blooming sun, 3 or 4, she's sporting cool shades, and her boxy black purse, almost as big as her, hangs casually on her shoulder. You look very pretty, I say. She smiles, and her hands and hips say, I know. I see her later with other sunflowers who spray each other with garden hoses and carry around cans of Diet Cola like secret treasure. They mark their territory with colorful concrete flowers and chalk rainbows burst with Smile, I Love You by Adrian to claim my block, my home, my life. But this is not just a place for the young. A toothless old head steps up to the mic and sings, Since I Lost My Baby. Who? Since I lost my baby. What? He pauses. Oh man, I forgot the words. Sits down waiting for some heckler to laugh, but it's all good and it feels good. And I wish I could drink this moment until satisfied I'll never know thirst again after such fulfillment. But we're just visiting, in search of a place to wash tired souls, whether it be on city blocks, in dirty houses, at lonely hotels, in Birch Jazz Bar, and maybe, just maybe, we can scrapbook moments of Kevin So singing, By the way, how's your father? Is your mama all right? I was hanging out with my family just the other night. And hope the next time we all get together, we remember our hot times in the city and the cleansing laughter of sunflower children blooming beautiful in Detroit. Thank you. So the next poem that I'm going to perform is also a new poem, and it's a poem that I wrote for my mother. I have a lot of poems that I write about and for my mother. I have a very complicated relationship with my mother, you know, without getting into that too much, I do recognize that much of the reason why I have such a complicated relationship with my mother is because of trauma that she has not been able to process because she grew up after the Korean War. And my grandfather was killed in the Korean War. And I don't know how much you guys know about the Korean War or how much you know about Korean culture, but for a child to grow up in Korea at that time without a father was extremely difficult, especially to be a female child. And so my mom went through a lot of really horrible experiences as a child as a result of, right, you know, the immediate effects of the Korean War. And so some of the stories that my mother has told me about those experiences, I kind of put into this poem, and I interweave them with my relationship with her. This poem is called Mother Words. On this day, I knew. Everything she did was a fight, and she loved me, though I believed she didn't. It is not her fault. My story is much shorter, and I cannot understand her habit of loving, a habit baptized by pain, which seeps from her stories, such as that of a hanbok, fitting like a tragic skin and sewn with money in the seams by a pair of floating hands, which pushed her onto a long, dusty road to Seoul. The money meant to buy shoes, instead spent on candy and sweet girlhood dreams. Or that of a hungry stream rushing by like a lunging tiger, she, in its midst, stranded and abandoned on rocks by the daughter of her stepfather's first wife, her own mother, too busy forging a new life for herself and starting a new family to notice the tears of her lost girl. Or that of a wailing child, newly discarded, chasing the dust of a wooden cart, fingers reaching to grab its splintered edges as her older brother, safely sitting astride the slumbering beast, screamed at her and smacked her hands away, each smack punctuating each heartbroken cry directed to the silent, immobile figure next to him. Amani! 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 She could not then imagine herself being called mother, the word taking on the semblance of a curse. And she does not include such confessions in her stories to me, stories told after I have tried to call upon her, my mother. But all she has are stories, and I have often responded by saying they are not my stories. I have my own dreams and cannot be bothered to think of hers. And what right do I have to speak of such things anyway, to retell her stories? But I often wonder, what if the real question is, without her stories, how do I know what is true? I struggle with the answers, but this is what I now understand. I do not properly say the word mother. And I did not know what a dream such a word is until I heard it spoken to me for the first time by my own daughters. The dream of hearing the mother word said not with pain, not with sorrow, not with anger, but instead a mother word whose very utterance is a redemption for acceptance, a prayer for understanding, a resurrection of love. Thank you. Yolanda, how am I doing on time? Okay. 2 more poems. So the next poem that I'm going to perform for you is called Notes from the Underground. And just really quick context, the initial inspiration for writing this piece was in 2002, which was the 20th anniversary of Vincent Chin's murder. Do you guys know who Vincent Chin is? If you don't know who Vincent Chin is, you should look him up. He was, just really quickly, in 1982, a Chinese-American man who was at a bar for his bachelor party, and he was accosted by some white auto workers who blamed the reason for layoffs in the American auto industry on the Japanese auto industry, and they accosted him in the bar, and he fought back, he defended himself, and so they watched him and waited until he left, and when he left, they chased him down and they beat him to death with a baseball bat, and they were acquitted of his murder, okay? And so Vincent Chin, in many ways, represents this case where Asian Americans were galvanized to come together and to protest and try to demand for justice for these incidents where anti-Asian violence happens, but we don't receive justice for it. So I was there for the 20th anniversary of his murder. This is the 35th, this year is the 35th anniversary of his murder. On the last day, we went to the cemetery where he was buried. And you know, this was actually also only a few months after 9/11, and things that were going on, right, things that I've been experiencing for the remembrance events, and also things, you know, anti-Muslim violence was up, you know, like it is now, right? It was at an all-time high. People who looked Muslim were being attacked. So that's why I wrote this poem, Notes from the Underground. Remember. I've been using this word a lot lately, but I wonder if I've been using it right. I mean, how do we remember ourselves? You know, repair our dismembered selves? I hear the Reverend say our speaking is just the beginning, but I stand in this cemetery that sings notes from the underground, and I wonder if silence ever really ends, especially in this Detroit summer swelter where I can't breathe enough to feed the human hunger of this place. But then I dream a breeze waltzes down my body and breathes life into this dirt, singing his notes from the underground, notes that windsurf on the early summer air until it's whispered in heart chords that chime tears of remembrance. And I cry, even though I didn't know him. And I wish I had a private moment to think about the difference between quiet and silence, listening and hearing, feeling and being, seeing and knowing. But all I have is this place that's become my pilgrimage and these people who have become my people. The family of Vincent Chin, my people. The family of Joseph Valeto, my people. The students from the University of Michigan, my people. These poets, musicians, singers, artists, my people. These Christians, these Muslims, these Jews, my people. And I wonder, when did we cease to be a people? At what point does conscience collapse so that we fail to remember ourselves before we swing a baseball bat? Before we squeeze the trigger 41 times? Before we drag black men to their deaths behind trucks down Texas roads? Before we bomb Afghanistan? Before we strap bombs to our bodies and become suicide bombers? Before we rape women in war? Before we abandon war babies? Before we invade Iraq? Before we shoot a 19-year-old Hmong youth 8 times in the back? Before we burn and hang and leave for dead a gay man on Wyoming fences? Before we shoot and kill unarmed African American men who have their hands up? Before we stab and murder a Muslim woman because she's wearing a hijab? Before we dismember ourselves? Because this list could go on and on and on to sever us with language that represents action without conscience. And in this moment, every part of me wants so badly to sing in retaliation and to dismember the moment I remember of being on bended knee, returning notes I received from the underground. A clicking noise warns that a beheading is coming. His snapshots quickly hunt me down and freeze me with questions just as intrusive as his camera. Why are you here? What is your connection? And I am too stunned by the demand for an answer to put in the words, the calling in my heart. So I remember, I say simply, I am an Asian American woman. It was important for me to be here. And I remember I spilled my tears onto red and yellow carnations that dance with baby's breath under the June Detroit sun. Thank you. This is my last poem. I want to say thank you so much to Yolanda Wisher. Can we give it up for Yolanda Wisher? She's our Poet Laureate, if you didn't know that. Please, Poet Laureate. I hope you'll come back next Friday when she's going to be behind the mic, okay? I also want to thank Philadelphia Contemporary, right? Emily and Tina, right? I met earlier tonight. Give it up for Emily and Tina for helping to, all the promotion that they've been doing, setting things up, making sure, I know for me anyway, you know, everyone's made me feel really, really welcome. I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you, thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity. This last poem that I'm going to perform is called A Little Too Much. It is a poem that I usually perform with my poetry partner, Kathy Villefan. She's not here, but can we give it up for my poetry partner, Kathy Villefan from Yellow Rage? Give her a shout out. We normally perform this poem together, but I'm just going to do my verses. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. This is a poem we wrote, just really quickly, this is a poem we wrote because for, touring as long as we have, we've been together performing for 17 years. And a lot of times when we'd go out performing, people would say stuff to us like to me, I'll just talk about me specifically. They'll say, oh, you're Korean? You don't look Korean, you look white, right? So then they'll say, oh, so in many ways they'll tell me I'm not Asian enough because I don't look Asian enough, whatever that means. And then the other thing that people will say to us is, oh, well, you use a lot of rhyme in your poetry. What are you trying to do? You trying to rap? You trying to do hip hop? You trying to be black? Right? So they'll say stuff like that. So because we rhyme sometimes in our poetry, they'll say, oh, you're trying to be black. So we wrote a poem in response to those people. And that's what this poem is. Just my verses, okay? Could you be more of this? Could you be less of that? Is it spoken word, poetry, or is it rap? My face holds stories that defiantly resist translation, yet your racial equation system interpretation is only skin deep. So I say my deepest thoughts are in braille. You can't feel me, to read me, to know me, because all you see is my skin is pale, and that one detail for you is enough to write me off, or maybe it's white me out, erase me to encase me in words and terms harmful lace to paste my face under your white labels. And then there are those who are still not sure, but are quite capable of asking the inevitable, are you mixed? You know, I hate to be the one to school you, but nobody ever said this shit was foolproof, so yeah, I'm mixed. Mixed, confused why you would ask me such a stupid ass question, and don't tell me not to be pissed. Spend a day in my skin to be accosted with, are you that, and are you this, and you'll be ready to say with me, yeah, I'm mixed, I'm half woman and half bitch. I'm sorry, I should have issued a profanity warning. I told Yolanda I was going to issue a profanity warning. Could you be more of this? Could you be less of that? Is it spoken word, poetry, or is it rap? So you still refuse to understand me, demand me to conform to your so-called truths when it's a lie designed to make me the perfect model of a minority. So what you're saying has got me looking at you sideways, so my eyebrows raised, talking like you know me and you know my people, like you wrote the book on us and own rights to the sequel, saying our struggles ain't equal, so you can cock mad formulas to fit us into, but you can't access my Asianness through accents and accessorize a slant in my eyes to make me more acceptable to you. I can be Asian and speak angrily without resorting to kung fu kicks and screams of hi-ya. I hate so-called progressives who play the name and blame game like they own the patent on anger pain because our struggle supposedly takes precedence over mine, and who question my Asianness because my lyrics sometimes rhyme. Well, fuck your bitch ass troll code, yellow rage ain't gonna fold. We still doing our shit with no mogul, no global, no beach, just vocals for love, spitting just for the local. See, I'm hopeful these lines of my thoughts congregate to conquer hate. It's not too late, don't be just another number in the database. We can head towards a greater place as part of a greater race, and you can call this a conscious rap. But wait, no, this is more than that. As I flow from hop sing to hip hop, Beijing to Bangkok, all locks on us are broken, and my words, they are spoken. So no, I can't be more of this, and no, I won't be less of that. This is what it is. Get used to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Please give it up again for Michelle Myers. And if you want to know more about her, her bio is on some of the tables. Please feel free to take a brochure and a bio and a sample poem. There's a little excerpt from Michelle that she actually read that excerpt in one of her poems today, so you can take that home with you. My name is Yolanda Wisher. I am your Philadelphia Poet Laureate. This has been the Outbound Poetry Festival Day 3. Please come back tomorrow. We'll be here again, 4:52 p.m. And our featured poet is Patrick Rosal. Give it up for the Outbound Poetry Festival and yourselves. Thank you. Peace.